Proszę Państwa, czujemy się wszyscy chyba już wystarczająco powitani na wszystkie możliwe sposoby, także możemy przejść z wielką radością już do naszego keynote speakera. Będzie to Steven Zipkes. Chwileczkę. Stevena ja poznałam właśnie podczas stypendium, które miałam okazję realizować w Stanach Zjednoczonych dzięki Ambasadzie Stanów Zjednoczonych. W Austin, Texas właściwie. To jest wspaniałe miejsce. I właśnie tam Steven, nieopodal w miejscowości Manor, stworzył taką STEM High School, która okazało się, że zmieniła otoczenie, w którym powstała. To nie była szkoła dla crème de la crème, tylko to była szkoła dla po prostu normalnych dzieciaków z okolicy, z mało zamożnych rodzin. Okazało się, że dzięki project-based learning, nauce opartej na projektach wyłącznie i mądremu podejściu, dzięki STEM-owi dało się zmienić tę okolicę, dało się zmienić ten kawałek świata. Teraz Steven jest zapraszany w różne miejsca, gdzie właśnie uczy, jak to robić. Zakłada teraz swoją nową szkołę, która już nie jest STEM, a STEAM, New Generation School. I myślę, że tytuł, jaki zdobył w Stanach Zjednoczonych, wizjonera STEM, jest w pełni zasłużony i chciałabym, żeby takie szkoły też powstawały u nas w Europie i mam nadzieję, że Steven powie nam teraz, jak to zrobić. Zapraszam serdecznie.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm coming to you today as a practitioner, somebody who actually lives, eats, and breathes with the students doing STEM every single day. So with that, let's begin.
I stand before you today to apologize. The system has failed you. I have failed you. I have failed to help you share your talent with the world when the world needs talent more than ever, yet it's being wasted every day by an educational system steeped in tradition and old ideas. Well, it's time for a new tradition. It's time to realize talent isn't just in schools like this one. It's everywhere. It's time to use technology to rewrite the rules of education. To learn how you learn so we can teach you better. It's time a university adapted to you rather than you adapting to it. It's time for a different kind of university. It's your time.
So in 1983, a seminal report called Nation at Risk was published, and it talked about the mediocrity of schools in America. And here we are from 1983 to 2016, and we're still facing the same type of mediocrity in schools. Our schools are continuously being bested by other countries and their students. And as a result, currently, there are over 4 million unemployed, unfilled jobs in the U.S., and we have 12 million Americans out of work. The issue is that we have unemployed Americans that do not have an educational background and the skills to fill those jobs. There was a report that the gap between children from the United States and other countries, that we were falling behind, and it cost America $2.3 trillion in economic input. So I showed you these two films, and there was a reason for it. Technology has grown exponentially. Just in the last 10 years, we've grown so fast. And what we have is in general, people do not understand what STEM is. In fact, if we talk about STEM, we can come up with the taxonomy. Well, STEM is easy to answer. It's science, technology, engineering, and math. But I contend that it's more. I believe STEM is a social issue. You can't have one without the other. It's about social justice, transforming culture, educating through inquiry and project-based learning, and making a true difference. There's a symbiotic relationship between what STEM is and what STEM is. If we knew what the answer with STEM was, we all wouldn't be here. Because if it was just about math, science, technology, and engineering, we've been doing that for the last 90 years. What's different about STEM? There's a gap. There's a STEM gap. And the gap is that we continuously educate the students that get it, but we have this significant number of students that either do not like math and science because they had poor relationships beginning, they don't understand it, so they turn off, and they continue to sit in classes where we lecture to students that don't get it. So by a symbiotic relationship, putting these two together, now we can solve the STEM crisis. We can get students interested in math and science that haven't been before. You see, STEM, to me, is a vehicle for change, but it's not without first changing the culture, because culture will eat strategy every single time. I live this. I see students that come in that have no interest at all, and they come through, and when you combine and they see that you have a genuine interest in what they do, in them, and you can take projects and get them excited and engaged in ownership, and they're not sitting there listening and regurgitating information, but they're getting that information and being able to take that information and transfer it to be able to solve real problems. That's what STEM is. I see it every single day. In fact, I'm involved in a lot of organizations in STEM. There is a concerted effort on the national level, the state level, and local level. Currently, in November, I attended the Next Generation High School Summit at the White House, and there's public and private sector support of $375 million for STEM, for high school redesign. There was $4.35 billion investment with Race to the Top to change schools and to focus on STEM. 10 years ago, when the STEM move started in the United States, there were a handful of STEM schools. Now, 10 years later, almost every single high school, every Tier 1 university has STEM programs and STEM curriculum and motivating students for STEM practices. There's also a big movement for reaching underserved youth, as well as working with girls. When we started with STEM 10 years ago, there were a handful of organizations that work with girls. In fact, when STEM was launched, it wasn't launched to reach those top kids. When STEM was launched 10 years ago, there was a purpose behind it. And it was to take those underrepresented students who weren't excited about STEM and getting them interested in STEM so we could close the achievement gap. That included girls. And I'm proud to say to this day, there are so many programs, after-school programs, in-school programs, STEM programs that focus strictly on girls as well as underrepresented students. In fact, in my school, we were 100% project-based learning. We were a STEM-focused school, and I had more girls than I did boys at the school. But there was no requirements to get into the school, so anyone and everyone could apply and come to the school. But I only had a limited number of spots. But what's exciting to see is when students were there for a year, they continued, and they'd go back and tell their friends, and they say, "You've got to experience this." We didn't have any athletics, so to speak. Our biggest sport program was our robotics program, and we had competitive robotics. But we also had video game design. We had science programs. We had math elite. So we had all types of programs. But we're seeing that. That's at the national level. At the state level, what started out with a handful of states involved in STEM, now almost every state has a STEM-X program that collaborate and communicate with each other as we start to look at best practices for STEM across the United States. In fact, I've been involved in several comprehensive research projects, and I'm going to mention two that you can go on and you can see they're comprehensive. And one is the Osprey study from George Washington University, and it was a case study that involved comprehensive STEM schools. And there were 8 comprehensive STEM schools that were identified as taking students and taking them to the next level with best practices. Then there was a follow-up case study from the University of Chicago, the Outlier STEM case study. And both of these looked at best practices for STEM to take students from here and to get them to here. I also have a couple of books that I've contributed to that involve STEM, and that's Design, Make, and Play, Growing the Next Generation of STEM Innovators and Deep Learning Beyond 21st Century Skills. So you can go on there and you can see these case studies. These are national case studies. In fact, they're probably the 2 largest case studies in the United States in schools on STEM. You can find a lot of information from those case studies. And there were several things that came out of the case studies that said these things are important to have a successful STEM school. Obviously, you need to have STEM-focused curriculum. The instructional strategies on inquiry-based and project-based learning. I cannot emphasize that enough. When I started this school 10 years ago, I was charged, you're going to take and open up a STEM school, and you're going to target underrepresented students have not been successful in math and science, and you're going to talk them into coming over and taking more math and science. That was not going to happen. So I had to think. I had to have a mindset, a shift to say, what could it be that these students are not being successful? And how could I get them to come over to a STEM school and take more math and science when they typically are failing right now? And I said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the pedagogy of the school. We're going to deliver instruction through project-based instruction. We're not going to sit there and lecture to them because the students in the front of the class, they're getting it. The students in the back of the class, they're already asleep. And the ones in the middle, those are the ones we're missing. So I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a mind shift and we're going to change and we're going to do projects. Everything's in projects. And what happened was a transformation of students. The third thing was integrating content. Typically, we teach content in silos. We have the math over here, the science over here, the engineering over here, and they shall never meet except when we have a staff meeting. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're going to integrate content because in the real world, outside of those four walls of school, they integrate, they collaborate. An engineer doesn't work by themselves. They work with the budgetary people. They work with the architects. But yet we expect students to teach, to learn in silos. I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to integrate content so we can create real world problems. Another important piece is developing relationships with your business industry. It's important. Industry has changed so fast. We have industry that we didn't have 10 years ago. And so these strategies, they're supporting not only girls, but they're underrepresented students as well. And I am passionate about STEM. And I am passionate about project-based learning. And when I'm asked, well, are you going to open a school that has criteria for admission? No, never. Because STEM is for all students, not for just some students. And so I'm really passionate about that. You see? Because it's not about what we teach all the time. If it was about what we teach, we would all be STEM literate and successful. Because we've been teaching what we teach for at least 80 years. Algebra 1 is still Algebra 1. 1 plus 1 still equals 2. So I contend that it's not about what we teach all the time. But it's about how we teach, how we connect with students. And you have an opportunity as a STEM organization and a STEM movement to reach students with engagement. We've seen it. We've all seen it in the class. They look bored out of their minds. We have to engage students, get them excited about learning.
This Prince song inside my head. Hands up if you're down to get down tonight. 'Cause it's always a good time. Slept in all my clothes like I didn't care. Hopped in.
That's the most beautiful girl in the world to me. That's my daughter. And she came to me in 3rd grade and she said, Daddy, can I have an email account? And I said, why? Because I'm going to make a video and I'm going to put it on YouTube. Everybody wants to put it on YouTube. And I thought about it and I said, okay, you can use my email account. And she created this video. She's never had a technology class in her life. But yet, she can create a video. There's an app for everything. There truly is. And if you think your students are coming, the students that we got 10 years ago are not the same students you have today. I promise you, technology has grown exponentially. If you expect my daughter to sit into a class while she's sitting there in rows, very structured, very nice. Don't raise your hand before you answer that question. It ain't gonna happen. And neither are the students that we have globally around the world, today's world. They're completely different because they grew up in an age where they don't know a world without technology. We have 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds that have iPads and they're running around touching everything all the time. I like to tell stories, so I'll tell you this one. A colleague of mine gave his 4-year-old son an iPad, and he learned how to get an app. All of a sudden, he gets a bill for $94. His son went on and started buying all these apps. So you have to beware. So let me talk to you about my school. When I started this school, I said, okay, it's going to be a STEM school. We're going to focus on science, technology, engineering, and math, but it's going to be integrated. We're not going to teach in those silos anymore. And the second thing, the expectations were that students were going to go to school and graduate with 5 years of math, 6 years of science, and a minimum of 2 years of engineering. Where I come from, you only have to take 3 maths. You only have to take 3 sciences, and you don't have to take any engineering. Now, do you remember what I told you? Who are the students that were coming to my school? Those were the underrepresented students that did not like math and science. But they were going to take this many years of math and science. You see, when it's engaging and exciting, they don't even know they're taking it. They just keep on going. And then we were going to focus on STEM. It was going to be all projects, and we were going to be one-to-one. We all know what one-to-one is, right? One-to-one technology means every student has access to a technology. 10 years ago, we didn't have iPhones. 10 years ago, we didn't have iPads. But yet, we were one-to-one. What that meant was when a student got into a class, they had access to technology, to a computer. It wasn't necessarily each student had something. And we had seamless integration of technology. Technology did not make the school. It was the invisible tool, very much like a pencil was for every student. I work with a lot of organizations, a lot of higher ed, a lot of national government groups. And the things that are working, these are some of the groups that have proven that we have national validity with our STEM process and how we look at STEM and how we view STEM. I'm not diminishing the science, technology, engineering, and math, but I am saying that it's a symbiotic relationship. You have to change the culture or you're not going to grow it. You'll have certain schools, your top schools, that can go do STEM, but you're still going to have that gap until you can figure out a way to develop that culture.
We are in a rapidly developing world where technology and society are increasingly changing. And I firmly believe that education needs to change with it so students can keep up with the demands of the job force.
What I learned from project-based learning is that learning should be about experiences and applying those experiences and knowledge in practical ways, rather than the traditional rote memorization and regurgitation of a traditional classroom.
And New Tech helped me in a number of ways, primarily with their system of project-based learning, which required an oral presentation after every project. This has developed my public speaking skills and has led to numerous accolades and success.
After 4 years of project-based instruction in high school, I gained the confidence to not only express my ideas to my peers, but also to my professors.
I'm going to be brief and say that the project-based learning in high school was beneficial to me because it improved my team building, public speaking skills, the whole give and receive constructive criticism, and problem solving. All these attributes are great to have when working in any job field.
I was in a fast-paced environment that taught me how to be more confident, be more team-oriented. It taught me how to communicate more effectively and work well under pressure.
Learning how to deal with friends and to work with friends and hold friends accountable, which is helping me now that I opened up a restaurant with my best friend. And sometimes it can get hard, but we just keep with what I learned at New Tech. We do a contract and we hold each other accountable. We have a rubric which outlines everything that is needed for us to run a smooth, proper restaurant.
I'm never afraid to go up to the board to show a proof in class sizes of over 150 students.
It's led to me getting a scholarship for the Texas Southern University debate team and winning numerous awards, me being active in the NAACP Houston Chapter's Political Action Committee, organizing protests and speaking at numerous events.
The PBL learning style inspires students to think more critically, not only about the lesson plan, but how it integrates into the world around them. And that's a really important skill that all young professionals will need.
You build team effort when working with your groups and acquire better public speaking skills when you have to present your projects. I think when that kind of system is combined with the STEM process, it shows how classes are relevant to one another.
Project-based learning is exciting and interesting, and it engages the students.
And you learn the way you want.
I'm very grateful for New Tech and everything that has contributed to my success.
I think that in the long run, I'm better off having attended a school that didn't just treat me like a student, but it treated me like an adult and a professional. And I'm really glad that I took that leap.
So I want to emphasize, I showed this video for a reason. There was only one mention of the word STEM in the entire video. But these students are all engaged. Not only are they engaged, they're all at the universities, and they're all studying STEM fields. You see, when a school and an organization doesn't necessarily put STEM at the forefront and looks and values the child and the student, then you start to transform the student. And those STEM qualities, that rigorous coursework, it's all done with projects. In fact, in 2013, President Obama came to my school because of the engagement and the success of the school. Now, I've been a high school principal for 20 years, and never in my time did I ever think the President of the United States would come to my school based upon the success of the school and the students. That was quite a moment. But you just saw a video of just some of the students that came to our school and that have left and now gone on to the university to focus on STEM studies. So something happened, and I keep talking about how things have changed exponentially. Something happened in 2007 and 2010 that impacted society, the world, and education. What is it? Come on, somebody. You know. What was it? The iPhone came out. It's hard to believe that the iPhone came out in 2007. Everybody's got a phone. Every single person. And it impacted society and the world. It was the first time a platform was available all on the globe. I've been around long enough. My first cell phone was a bag, and I carried it, and the phone was this big, and I'd pull it out and talk. And it cost me about $10 a minute, and I never used it. Now, everyone has access to, and this is just the phones. Think of everything else that have grown. Watch this. So I just took a snippet of this because I thought it was important. It's the first time we have 4 generations working side by side. I remember when I started the school, I used to email. Nobody emails anymore. We text. We don't even call on the phones anymore, right? We text for everything. It's grown exponentially. Some of the jobs that you saw up there, they weren't around back 10 years ago. In fact, one of the newest jobs that's out there and the most high demand job that we still are trying to develop is cybersecurity. Few universities offer cybersecurity as a degree, but more and more are starting to bring that up. In fact, I had conversations last night. Higher ed's changed in the United States significantly. 10 years ago, I'll go back further. 15 years ago, there were no online courses for Tier 1 universities. They would never have online courses. But the largest university in the United States is Phoenix, 800,000 students. It's an online university. And today, every single Tier 1 university in the United States has online courses. We have to grow. And so when we start looking at an innovation ecosystem, what we're looking at is a systemic change from one generation to the next. We're starting a new generation of change that we don't know yet. In fact, we were talking last night, you have Snapchat, you have everything in Poland we have there. I couldn't even tell you how to get on Snapchat, but my children are on it all the time. And if we're not keeping up with that, we're going to get lost. And it's the first time in my career that technology is forcing the change in not only education, but in the industry. Think about it. We used to teach students how to use technology. We used to bring technology into industry to say, this can help you. They're telling us now, we have this technology, you need it. It's pushing us for further and further into the future, and it's not going to stop. So STEM is so important, and we have to get those students those skills for that rigorous education, as well as developing that ownership. So women in STEM, there's a gap. And whether we want to admit it or not, there is a bias. There's a bias in women in STEM. You see, 57% from the National Science Foundation, 57% of bachelor degrees associated are with women and minorities. However, when you look at the actual degrees, I got to do this. I'm talking to myself. When you look at the total the degrees, by far, biological sciences, women outdo the men in biological sciences. But in every other STEM field, we're lagging. We have to find ways to get girls engaged. And I'm proud to say that many organizations are working with girls to get them excited about coding. Coding is a language that we all have to have. In fact, I found a way to incorporate coding, and the students don't really care. I'll take it because they get foreign language for it. They get a foreign language credit. So coding and girls in STEM, you can see we have ways to go. In fact, I wanted to talk quickly about biases. You know, in 2015, Tim Hunt made headlines, and he said the trouble with girls, there was 3 things that happen when they're let into the lab. You fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, and when you criticize them, they cry. He was a Nobel Prize winner, and he publicly said that. You tell me there's no bias? Yes, there is. We have to overcome that. And the only way to fix that problem is to admit that you have one. So in conclusion,
hello, Texas.
I thought I'd show you this.
Well, howdy, Maynard. Go Titans. I want to thank Principal Zipkes for his great work. The folks around here are doing something right, and I think the rest of the country can learn from what you're doing. So I've come to listen and learn and highlight some of the good work that's being done. There's a reason why teachers and principals from all over the country are coming down to see what you're up to. Because every day, this school is proving that every child has the potential to learn the real world skills they need to succeed in college and beyond. And you all are doing it together. You know, at Manor, a history teacher might get together with a math teacher and develop a project about the impact of castles on world history and the engineering behind building castles. Or a group of students might be in charge of putting together a multimedia presentation about the moral dilemmas in literature as applied to World War II. And while most high school students in America give a handful of speeches by the time they graduate, a student at this school might give as many as 200. Now, that's a lot of speeches. I can relate. And you know, I just had a chance to see some of the incredible work that some of the young people here are doing. You know, folks who use mathematical equations to build musical instruments, and tests on bungee jumping with rubber bands and weights, and you know, robots that were being built, and all kinds of great stuff. And you're doing things a little differently around here than a lot of high schools, and it's working. It's working. And by the way, the majority of students at Maynard don't come from wealth or privilege. Some folks here might have come from, you know, some pretty tough backgrounds, and yet the vast majority of students here stay in school, they graduate. Your test scores in most subjects have been higher than the state average. Almost every member of the recent graduating class went on to college, and about 60% of them were the first in their families to do so. You should be proud of that. So this is an impressive group. There's innovation going on that equip graduates for the demands of a high-tech economy. There's a lot of hands-on learning here. You know, part of what makes this place special is that there's all this integration of various subjects and actual projects and young people doing and not just sitting there listening. So I could not be prouder of what's happening here at Maynard. That's why I wanted to come. Last month, students in a digital media class made a YouTube video describing why this school was so special. Some students talked about how they're looking forward to being the first in their family to go to college. Others talked about learning new skills, taking on more responsibility. And one sophomore summed it up nicely when she said, "This school is a lot more than just a school, it's a family. And it's filled with people that are going to care about you and are going to help you." Well, Maynard, that's what every school should be. So thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. God bless America.
So in conclusion, I hope I've had you at least question. I hope I've inspired you to think about what STEM really is and how do we get students and close the gap globally in STEM. So thank you so much.